So we are in a very pivotal moment in our history. It's the moment that David, who was promised the world and eternity, and his house is going to be, always the king. The king is going to be always from the house of David, which obviously God does not go back on his promise. Is now sort of putting in some wrenches in the ring here, and basically punishing the house of David with very severely for something that he did. It was a little bit, below what was expected. And that is the story of the Bathsheba, which we discussed in the past couple of weeks. The actual details of what happened over there. Just a very 2-minute, very short recap. David HaMelech is walking on the roof and seeing a beautiful woman, Bathsheba, and he realizes that she is the one because he's a prophet. He has some insight that normal people don't have. He realizes that she is the one that's going to produce the heir to the throne. So he's and she's at the moment temporarily divorced from her husband Uriah, who is one of the generals, one of the soldiers, not generals, the soldiers, the Giborim of David, and he is in the front. And then she became pregnant from that from this encounter, and David HaMelech, fearing a scandal, was trying to see if Uriah is going to go back to her or not, and Uriah did not want to for his various calculations. None of them were legitimate, and he disrespect the king, which brings with it a death penalty. And David could have easily executed him in Beis Din, bring him to Beis Din and say, hey, he disrespected the king, and it's a clear case. Don't need juries for 10.5 hours, it's on the spot. And but he didn't do that. Instead, he arranged for Uriah to be in the front line in a fierce fight, which resulted in Uriah dying. And that is how the last chapter ended, and saying that God didn't like it one little bit. And so God is sending to David a message with what to do with this situation. So Vaishlach Hashem et Natan el David. Natan, the prophet who actually wrote this book of Shmuel Bet, right, was sent. Now Vaishlach, just so we know, after we put together all of the argument against, before we even start, the first word is indicating very friendly message. Vaishlach is in the Tanakh in general is a friendly message. Is not a messenger of rebuke or it's very friendly. Why? Because the bottom line is that, and the Gemara is saying very clearly that David did not sin. Whatever he did, it was correct, except the timing was a little bit rushed. The optics was a little bit, blurry. But he did not sin. He did not do anything improperly that requires a punishment. And we will see at the end of the rebuke, at the end of the discussion between the prophet Natan and David, saying, he right away admits guilt, and yes, I'm ready to die for my sin. And the prophet is telling him, no, you're not dying so quickly. You're not dying, basically. And the rabbis are saying that David was forgiven. He was the inner feeling that he was walking around with in the past few months, from the time that Uriah was killed till the time that Natan the prophet, came to him, there were a few months. And in those months, he lived with Bathsheba in his home, and she was pregnant, and he was eating himself up inside in pain for the method or for the way he did what he did, the speed in which he sort of jumped the gun. So, and some commentators are saying that torment that he went through basically expunged or purged the problem. And that kind of tshuva purged the main problem here. And that's why he was not punished more severely. But it's a message for all kings, for all times, to really take count to 10 before you do something so radical. So, So what happens here, Vayishlach Hashem et Natan el David, Vayavo elav, so he came to him, and Natan is starting to give him an analogy. And the obvious question that we mentioned briefly last time is, what is the analogy here? I mean, they have really open relationship, Natan and David, and God and David, right? He could have told him straight out, man, you didn't do right. What's going on here? It's not, you didn't expect that. You shouldn't have. So why is he giving him analogies and telling him a story about, it's like the famous story that somebody came to the rabbi and asked a question and says, my friend asked. So to the Rebbe actually they came. So the Rebbe said, why didn't your friend come and say that, ask himself and said that he's asking for his friend, He could have, he didn't have to send you. So the point is that we are very lenient and very not judgmental when it comes to us. Did I do anything wrong? Hardly ever. And when I did, it's not that wrong, and but in order to really understand what's going on, we see it on others very, very quickly and very harshly and very severely, and we see exactly what everybody is not good at. You walk to shul and you see, oh, this guy is like that and that guy needs that one. You know exactly what everybody needs, right? We can write a prescription for everyone for everything that they need. So in order to judge ourselves in a just way, what God is many times doing is giving us a story which is similar to what we did, and then He let us render the verdict, and that's why we have to be very careful the way we talk about others. Very careful when we feel that people did something wrong. Just be quiet. It's better to be quiet than to render judgment, because it can, God forbid, come as a boomerang back. So he's telling him the analogy, and the analogy, there were two people living in one city. And we will try to understand, obviously, how that relates to, two people, David and Uriah, right, living in one city. Echad Ashir ve'echad Rash. One of them is rich, and the other one is poor. Now, poor, Rash they are, for poor people, there are a lot of shades, and you have Ani, you have Rash, you have Dal, you have all kinds of words to describe someone who doesn't have a buck. And Rash is one of the worst one of them, if not the worst one. Rash is like someone who has really nothing. Now here, what and the way you spell Rash is Reish Shin. And here, if you see, it's spelled Reish Aleph Shin. You can read it as Rosh, head. Okay? Why? Because Uriah was not really, he didn't have the money and the ability that David had, but he was one of the main guys in the army. He was paid well. He wasn't really poor. But in that case, in what we are talking about, in regards to Bathsheba, he was the poor one. Okay, in regards to that woman, he was the poor one, and David was the major one, the rich one. So two people live in the same city, one poor, one rich. ולעשיר היה צאן ובקר הרבה מאוד. And the rich person had a lot of flock and a big herd. And that is signifying that David had many, many wives and many, many children. And if he wasn't happy with the produce, he wasn't happy with the children, and if he thought that none of them really fit the bill of being an heir to the throne, he could have taken more wives or produced more children from the same. I mean, he had ability. Okay, in those days, nowadays we know that the law is that we can only marry a man can only marry one woman. In those days, it wasn't like that, especially a king. A king in those days had the ability to marry up to 18. Okay? And at this point of time, David HaMelech had only 6. So he had a lot of, room to grow. ולרש אין קול. And to the poor man, he doesn't have anything. כי אם כבשה אחת קטנה, only one little lamb. And little because she was really young. Bathsheba was 6-7 years old at that time. Very, very, very young. And he didn't have another wife. Remember that. He had only Bathsheba as his wife. So the next few words will be strange. Asher kana, he bought her, because we know that there is a thing when a man is marrying a woman to have, it's a kinyan, it's some sort of a transaction. We don't like to think about it that way, but the legal construct is such. Vayechayeha, and he gave her life. Vayetigdal imo, and she grew up with him. Again, she was young. Ve'im banav, and with his children. So if he didn't have a wife, what's up with the children? So it turns out that Uriah had a prior wife. The wife is no longer with us. And he had children, older children. And they grew up together with this young woman, Bathsheba, who was with him. Mipito tochal, she ate from his bread, from his pita. And umikosot ishteh, and she drank from his cup. Ubechekot ishkav, and she was nesting in his bosom. Vatilo kevat, and she was like a daughter to him. Again, to tell us that he really did not have a relationship of a husband and wife with her yet. So far it was like a father and a daughter, which again, all to justify what David did. It was not really wrong. Vayavo helech laish yashir. So now, the way we're going to read it is we're going to read it in two avenues, two parallel tracks. One track is just the simple way of looking at it, which, there was one poor man, one rich man. The rich man had a lot of herd and flock and sheep, and the poor man had only one. And what happened with them? That's one track. And another track is that there was the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, that creeped in and came to talk to David. Okay? So, Vayavo helech laish ashir. So yavo, someone, a traveler who comes and go. Helech is someone who's traveling, that, just passing by, a bypasser. He came to the rich person. ויחמול לקחת מצונו ומבקרו לעשות לאורח הבא לו. And the rich man wanted to honor this passerby, this traveler, by giving him a little, setting him up with a good meal, essentially, from his lamb and from his calves. And now, la'asot la'oreach, and now he's not calling him, what did he want, who did he want to honor? He didn't want to honor the traveler, he wanted to honor the guest. So now the traveler became a guest, meaning he's already settling down here, all right? Again, let's look at it from both ways. The story is the story, but when we're talking about the other track, the Yetzer Hara track, this is the way the Yetzer Hara deals with us. First of all, he's just passing by and just throwing an idea and gone, no problem. You have no problem dealing with that evil inclination because it's just so easy, you know. But then he comes, you know, he's sitting, drinking a cup of coffee with you, you know, tea, and enjoying, he's being a guest in your house. And then he becomes then he becomes an owner. Then he's taking some piece of ownership here. So right now, there was a passerby, and the rich man wanted to honor him with a good meal. So he made him like a guest. You're calling him now. So what does he do? ויקח את כבשת האיש הרש ויעשיה על האיש הבא אליו. So he did not want really to spend the money from his own flock, even though he had plenty, and it was very easy and inconsequential for him to honor that man with a good meal of his own. But instead, he goes and he takes the lamb of the poor man, and he's preparing it for the man who came to him. Laish, now he's calling him the man who's like is in charge here, you know, who's here, who came here, who's here. So obviously that makes people's blood boil, right? I mean, what in the world, you know? Why would you take the only one lamb that this poor man had? So David HaMelech reacts as expected. Vaychar af David ba'ish me'ot. So David HaMelech, as soon as he hears a story, and he doesn't think it's himself, right? It's just a story, and he realized that Natan, for David HaMelech for Natan to come to David HaMelech with a case, it's one of two things, you know. Either what it's here, which, you know, you wouldn't think about up front, that this is just an analogy, you know, it's not something that's obvious. The only other option is that it's a real story, it's a real situation, and you can't deal with this situation in a regular track, in a regular court system. For whatever reason, you know, because David HaMelech, one of the big things that David HaMelech did is he set up courts all over. He really organized the whole justice system in a very smart and just way. So, you know, if you had a dispute about anything, you know, you go to the judges, and what's the big deal? Now, Mr. Natan, the prophet, is coming to David to tell him some sort of a case, which is, wow. That means that he needed David HaMelech to punish that person, or to render the verdict of that person, and that's a question that came to David. I mean, what's going on here? So, Vayomer el Natan, and David HaMelech again. When he sees injustice, he really he's very quick draw. Vayomer el Natan, Chai Hashem ki ben mavet ha'isha oseh zot. That is swearing in the name of God and saying that man is a dead man. You know, is basically he deserves to die. So we will see exactly. Now the question is. What? Deserves to die? Why, if you take someone's lamb, even if it's his last lamb, he deserves to die? I mean, a murderer deserves to die. You know, if someone does all kinds of irreversible acts, they deserve to die. But just to take a lamb from a person, so you give him back too, whatever. What's the, you know, why? It's a question that's right away pops. Why did David HaMelech render that verdict? We'll see in a second. And then David HaMelech adds, Ve'et ha'kivsa yeshalem. That not only the man deserves to die, he also needs to pay back the lamb, which, you know, if you ask little old me, you know, that's what you should do, right? If someone stole, they need to repay. Okay, they need to repay double. That's the Jewish law, is that when someone stole, when someone robs, they just have to give it back, because they're not afraid of, they're doing it, you know, in the street. Mugging is happening in daylight, in broad daylight. But when someone steals, they're trying to fool themselves. They think God is not looking, whatever. So the Jewish law is that someone who steals has to pay double. And here, Ve'et ha'kivsa yeshalem arba times, so he needs to pay 4 times. Very, very harsh, and seemingly on the surface strange. אשר עשה את הדבר הזה, ועל אשר לא חמל. That he did that, and he did not show pity. Okay? So, we will just read the next few sentences, and then we'll go back and drill into this to understand it, because it's really super harsh it's not nice, but okay, death, and to pay back 4 times. ויאמר נתן אל דוד אתה האיש. So David, so that's the Natan basically finishes the act here and says, you're the man. You're it. You just rendered your own, your own verdict. So let's talk a little bit about this verdict. Let's see what's in it, and let's understand some of the laws that are in play here that caused David to give this such a harsh sentence. Okay. So number one, we mentioned already that the thief has to pay double. Okay. However, there is an exception, and the exception is if the thief stole a lamb or an ox and didn't just steal and kept it, they killed the shecht, the lamb, and sold it. Then they have to pay 4 times, because when someone just steals something and uses it, it's bad enough. If they also go and it's a big thing to slaughter an animal and to make sure it's shecht correctly, and then you cut it to pieces and then you sell it. It's more of a business, It's not just shoplifting quickly. It's more of a business. So the Torah is very, very strict about that, and the person has to pay 4 times. 4 times, ding, ding, ding. That's where we get the 4, right? Because it's a lamb and it was slaughtered, so that's why it's 4 times. It's that's the actual law. Now, there is another law, and that is there is another saying. There is another saying that it's in Baba Kama. It says someone who is robbing a poor man, meaning a poor man doesn't have a lot of money, right? And they have this one coat or one thing that they're carrying, and a mugger came, and instead of mugging a Wall Street executive, they mugged a poor man in the subway, homeless. They don't have a dime to their name. So the Gemara is saying that a person like that is as if they're taking the life of that person. Ki'ilu notel nafsho. Because they worked so hard and they have so little, and someone came and just grabbed that one thing that they have. It's as if you killed the person. It's you basically took everything they own. So that's one of the commentaries are saying that is where the ben mavet, the death sentence is coming from, because you took. The description was really heart-wrenching, that the poor man that doesn't have anything, and you have just little lamb, and he grows with his kids, and is sleeping in his sharing a pillow, and it was very heartfelt story. So the person is really poor, and when you take the one thing that they have, it's considered as if you killed them. So that's where David HaMelech came up with that harsh sentence of Ben Mavet. Now, so there is another rule here which we have to be aware of, and that is, it's called in Aramaic Kimle B'deraba Minei. What does it mean? When someone is performing one act, and for that one act they supposed to get 2 punishments, or they did 2 acts in one shot with one move. For example, someone who on Yom Kippur in shul, someone set up fire to a friend's talis. Okay, so what happens here? They turn on they lit fire on Yom Kippur. which is an extraordinarily large sin that comes with basically a death sentence. Karet, not by Din, not the humans are not executing it, but God. The death sentence by Hashem. But they also, burn someone's talis, so they have to pay him the $80, $100 that the talis cost. So there is a discussion in the Gemara whether the person is going to get the death sentence and pay the talis, or just one of them. So there are many details in it. Some say, and this is just one example. So this is an example of death from God and paying to a person. There is death by a person and paying to a person. For example, if someone is mechal Shabbos by tearing someone else's garment, so Chilul Shabbat is stoning, right? And tearing someone else's garment, they need to pay for the garment. So now it's death by Din and monetary loss. So the bottom line is that there is a rule that says you just give him one punishment and you give the most severe one. If someone is dying, you don't also give him lashes. If somebody's dying, you don't make sure that they pay you the $100. So that's the rule. So one rule. Now, there is another rule, and I'm sorry for diverging, giving you a bunch of rules here, but you need to take it all as a one. That's the beauty, or that's the difficulty when you come to a judge, when you come to a Rav with a story that seems very simple, but there are so many considerations. And what do you apply? What you don't apply? What is similar? What is not? So we have the stealing. We have the stealing and the feeding, which is times 4. We have taking from the poor's man, as if the killing. You have the fact that you did 2 bad things. What are the 2 bad things? So we know that he killed Uriah, or not killed, but he caused Uriah to die and took Bathsheba. So those are 2 things. So maybe those are 2 acts. Maybe it needs 2 punishments. So if they need 2 punishments, maybe you just go with the most severe one. What's the second one? So there is another law that if someone owns an ox, and the ox is a bully that keeps hurting people, you take him outside and they keep using their horns to ram people. So the first time that it happened, you didn't know. So it's you didn't know. So you're not obligated. The second time as well, but after the third time, it's called shor muad. It's a bully, is a certified bully. You have to really make sure to guard that bully double and triple careful, and make sure that he does not have the opportunity to hit someone else. So if someone has such a bully shor, a muad, shor muad, an ox, and that ox killed after he became a certified one, it says that the bully has to die. The bully is killed by stoning, and also his owner is killed. Whoa! So the rabbis are saying no, he's not being killed, but the owner he's supposed to get such a harsh sentence from above, from God. But in lieu of that sentence, we switch it and he pays for his value. Meaning, if he's a person that is valued in the slave market as worth $1,000, so he needs to pay the $1,000 in exchange of his life, so to speak. So we see. And it's a whole discussion in the Gemara and Baba Kama, how you learn it, and proofs and some other verses that are proving it. But the bottom line is the person can exchange their harsh punishment of death by God to a lower punishment, which is it's payment, monetary. We do it also, by the way. We do it in a more light way. Let's say, let's tell you a story that nobody heard of, that a Sefer Torah fell in a shul. So people need to fast. That's the official rule, that people would need to fast. But because of the generation is weak and we can't really expect it, and it's not going to happen. So instead of fasting, what is fasting? Fasting is giving our lives, basically, because you start the fast, 100 pounds, you end the fast 99 pounds. So you're giving part of yourself when you're fasting. Instead of fasting, we give tzedakah. So we exchange our life. We exchange that pound of flesh. We exchange it for tzedakah. So it's a common construct in Jewish law to exchange monetary switch consideration for to save one's life. So let's put it all together. Okay. So David HaMelech said that this person, because he took it from a poor man, and therefore it's as if he killed him. Therefore, Hashem needs to pay him with that death sentence. But in order to help that person not to suffer that death sentence, he can exchange it for paying back the lamb, and he has to pay it on the more severe, the higher rate of paying 4 times, quadruple pay for one lamb, because of the type of thief that he was, and that will settle the case, that will settle the account, and the person will not need to die. That is what he was saying in terms of, if we're talking about lamb, and if we're talking about if we're talking about a poor man, that's what he answered straight to Natan. But now Natan is telling him, Mr. David, this is not a poor man, it's not a rich man, it's you, my love. Ata ish, כה אמר Hashem Elokei Israel, and so said the Lord Hashem, Anochi meshachticha lemelech el Israel, I made you a king on Am Israel, Vanochi tzalticha miyad Shaul, and I saved you. Why do we need this whole thing? God, in the beginning, the God created the heaven and earth. We know that God made him a king. We know that he saved him from Shaul. David knows it. Why is he saying it here? He's coming to tell David, listen, yes, Bathsheba was your wife from the time the world was created. She was meant for you. Yeah, you're right. And yes, Uriah was a rebel that was supposed to be killed because he rebelled against you. Yes, but come on. God made you king. God saved you from Shaul. A little bit of trust in God that he will arrange things in that what's coming to you will come to you. What needs to happen what must happen will happen. You have a track record, a pretty extraordinary track record with God. So you should have just waited and not jumped the gun. That's why he's mentioning this history. And he's saying, not only that God saved you from Shaul, he gave him the house of Shaul. He gave him the property of Shaul. So, don't worry. Yes, Bathsheba used to belong to someone else, and she was free, really. She was a divorced woman at the time. But still, doesn't look good, because you usually go back to the previous husband when he comes back from the war. So God is, he gave you the house of Shaul, and he gave you the wives of the previous king. You had the right to do that. So even in those areas, Hashem is really managing to give you everything that he wanted to give you, that you deserve. And the third thing that you get, you can also have all of the property. You can, as a king, you're allowed to, eminent domain. You can declare there are a whole bunch of things that you can take for yourselves from the people of Israel. And just note here that he already here mentions not only one Bet Israel as one Jewish people, he mentions both, Israel and Yehuda. Yehuda and Israel. The split is starting. The split between us, between the Jews, the house of Israel and the house of Yehuda, is actually cracking and actually happening now. This is the beginning of the big split. ואם מעט, והוסיף לך כהנה וכהנה, and if it's not enough, God can give you more, twice as much, kahena v'chahena, more and more. So you should have chilled and have done it a little slower. Madua bazita et dvar Hashem. Why did you desecrate the words of Hashem? La'asot hara be'enav, be'eno. It's written in his eyes, and it says in my eye. You basically have done something which is not really looking good. And et Uriah Achiti kita b'cherev, you did two things wrong. You managed to kill Uriah Achiti even though he deserved it. Had you taken him to court, to Beis Din, no problem. Justified 100%. You're the best tzaddik in the world, nothing, no problem. He's the best tzaddik in the world anyway. Ve'et ishto lakachta lecha li'isha, and it is his wife you took to be your wife. Again, this is a bit of an exaggeration here, because she was not officially a wife. She was divorced. Ve'oto harakta becherev bnei Ammon, and you killed him. How did you kill him? You killed him in a war. Had you killed him in a Beis Din, it would have been good, as we said, but you didn't. You opted to do it in a underhanded way. So what's the punishment for it? The punishment for it, va'ata lo tasur cherev mibetecha ad olam, mibetcha ad olam. That because you used the sword to solve this problem, the sword is not going to leave your home, unfortunately. And from that point on, and we will see, David HaMelech suffered, and the house of David suffered. Not many kings died in their sleep. Not many kings did not suffer. None of them. I think all of them suffered in one way or another. The sword is not going to stop, and forever. And the truth is that this is also the fate of us, because this has to do with the entire Jewish people. Unfortunately, our history is not that stellar in terms of suffering. Ekev ki bizitani vatikach et eshet Uriah Hiti liot lecha l'isha. It's because you desecrated me, and you took the wife of Uriah to be your wife. So that is the first punishment, the punishment of death. Okay, and we will see 2 verses down. David says, "No worries, I'm ready to die for my sin." And Nathan says, "No, we're not. You're not going to die, because God recognizes the fact that it's not you didn't really kill an innocent man. You didn't really took someone else's wife. She was divorced. She meant for you, so you're not going to die. But you rendered that verdict because the way it looks. So therefore, you'll just suffer." Now he's getting. Remember, we're saying 4 times. David HaMelech said that he's going to. The person has to pay 4 times as much. So David HaMelech paid 4 times, 4 deaths. The Bathsheba was pregnant at the time with the kid that could have been the ultimate Goel, the Mashiach, and so that kid would die within 7 days of his birth. That's number one. Amnon is one of the other the children of David, the older one at the time, I think. He also was killed. We'll see how. Tamar, Tamar, the daughter, was raped by Amnon before Amnon was killed. And Avshalom, that's the youngest son at the time, died. Obviously, he rebelled against David and ended up dying in the battle. So 4 deaths right away. That's the 4 times paying for that lamb. So Ko Amar Hashem, Hineni makim alecha ra'a mibetecha. And on top of that, because you went into someone else's house and basically destroyed it, I'm going to destroy your house. And what will happen is, v'lakachti et nashecha. So I'm going to a calamity will be rising against you from within your own household. V'lakachti et nashecha le'enecha, and I will take your wives while you were alive. And v'natati le'reacha, and I would give them to someone else, just like you took some, a wife that could have, should have, would have been someone else's wife, at least for temporarily. And I will do the same to you. And he will sleep with your wives under this very sun. The story is that Avshalom, when he was rebelling against his father David, he took some of the concubines, some of the wives that David HaMelech had, and he slept with them as if he is now the king. That's marking his right. So just like David made Uriah lose, someone from within will do the same to him. Very, very harsh, very, very harsh. And with all of that, we're saying that he didn't sin. It's hard to understand. It's just hard to understand. That's all I can. That's as far as I can explain it. Ki ata asita baseter. Now, what God is telling him, you did it in hiding, because he did not take Bathsheba in front of everyone and made a big ceremony when he took her originally. He took her, he sent one messenger and then another messenger, and she came to him very quietly, and she became pregnant. Nobody knew really from who. So you did it in hiding. But God says, I'm going to do it in front of everyone. Everybody is going to see your disgrace, v'neged hashemesh, and in front of the world, in front of daylight, in broad daylight. So everyone will know and will take note for forever that something like that is really not to be done. So we will just finish with the next verse, because I think after all of that we have to finish in something good. Vayomer David el Natan chatati l'Hashem. So David HaMelech right away takes responsibility, as is customary. He did it several times before, and he's saying it now again. He's not blaming someone else. Shaul blamed the Am Yisrael and this and that and the other. He's not blaming anyone else. Vayomer Natan el David. So he's ready to take responsibility, step down, die, whatever. Vayomer Natan el David, so Natan is answering David, Gam Hashem ha'avir chatatcha lo tamut, but God remitted your sin. God is forgiving you, and you're not going to die. You're going to have all these punishments. You're going to have a lot of trouble. It's not going to be an easy ride, but you are not going to die. You're not, all of the promises that God gave are eternal, and they'll remain as such. So in 2 weeks, when we resume,